So I have drawn my whole picture, and you want to make sure that you go and you save it under File, and I saved it earlier so that it's saved. And I can turn this background off and on to see if there's any holes. So I'm now going to throw that background away because it will get in the way of going to Illustrator. So next to this making a new layer is a trash can, and I've selected that background layer, and I'm now clicking the trash can, and it'll ask if you want to delete it. So I'll say yes. And by that time, then I have just the image with no background, and I want it to look white behind it. In order to do that, I'm going to click on layer and flatten it. And now I have a nice drawing without the background. And I can look at it even more carefully, like right here in that corner. I don't know if you can see where you are sitting, but I see a tiny little bitty hole right there that if I was going to color it in with my paint bucket, my color would leak. So I'm going to go back with my pencil right quick and put a line there. So our goal was to create a drawing that we can fill, and that means there's no holes. And I'm going to save one more time. And then I'm going to go over here to the bar at my side or at your bottom. And Illustrator says AI. If you don't have that showing up there, you have to go to your rocket ship launch pad up here, and then you will look for the Illustrator AI here and double click it to open it up. Once you get to Illustrator, you want to go to File and do a new document, because in order to do what we're going to do, which was called Live Trace and Live Paint, we have to open it differently. And so my custom document is 3 by 3, and that's about right to make a mandala. So here over on the side is called 3 inches width and 3 inches height. And I'm just going to click create, and I'll have a little blank page here that's 3 inches tall and 3 inches wide. And then we're going to go to File and go down to Place. And Place will allow me to go to my desktop and find my drawing. And I called mine Layer W Photoshop, and I'm going to place it. Click Place. And when I have that ready, then you can see that this little corner thing will open up on your screen. And I'm going to click in the top left-hand corner. And then there is my document that I drew. And I can pull it out and make it go across the whole thing if I want to. Otherwise, it's super tiny. And then I want to leave it with the little X going through it and the little tiny dots on the corners. Because at that moment that I'm ready to do what's called Live Trace. If you don't have Live Trace in your top, then you can go down under Windows and look for it. Image Trace is what it's called here under this part of the program. And I pulled that up, and it will allow you to trace an image in all kinds of ways. The default one is black and white. And what this is going to do is clean up and make your trace hopefully more beautiful. That one did not come through with the threshold very well. So I can set my threshold higher, which is actually going to make my lines thicker. That black and white mode. I could try it under grayscale and see if it did it any better. Nope. Tracing result with outlines, that one actually worked. The tracing result with outlines gave me a nice thick image that I can see. Let's change that back to black and white. And now what this is called is a, drawing a blank. In Photoshop, it was done by pixels, and this is now done with vectors, which is a mathematical calculation, and that's why it cleans it up into a vector document. And it is done, and now I can export it as, and I want you to export it as a PNG document. And I could try trace PNG, background color white. Usually I want it to be a high resolution of 300 ppi up here. And we will leave this open and go look at that in Photoshop to see if it traced it well enough that we can color it and use it. So basically then I go back to Photoshop and I will go to new open, and we'll look at opening the Png, and it does not look like it saved all of my lines. So in order to do that, I'm going to make my lines a little thicker by pouring my paint bucket on them. Whoops, that one didn't work that way. Well, we could pour it in, but I'm going to try pouring it just on the line, or we could go into select color range and select white or blue. Select color range blue. And then we can modify that by going to modify and expanding that selection a little bit. 3 pixels is not very much. That would be really quite fat. Do you see where the dots are on the screen? And I could pour the paint bucket into that and make really fat lines. Let's try. I selected the blue under color range, select modify, expand by 1, and see what that looks like. And now I've got dots there that are at a decent size, and I could pour the blue into that. It usually works better on a new layer, so I'll put it on a new layer and pour it in. And then it will make the whole solid thing a thicker line, so that when I go into image trace, it will be thick enough and clean enough to use. All right, see, still it's very pixelized on the edges, which I think is particularly ugly, that I don't want a drawing that looks like that. So at this point, I'm going to throw away the extra layer here. Flatten it under layer again, and save it. Then back in my Illustrator, which is still open, I will just hit my delete button, which will take that image away, and go File to Place one more time. And click it in the corner. And then we'll trace. And now look, it's a beautiful, clean, great looking drawing. I can color that as many colors as I want and as many times as I want. And I've created my own vector ready to do. So the steps might be a little difficult, so I definitely will save this video. But last thing I'll do is I'm going to save this AI document as an AI trace flower. So I've got it, and then I'm going to export it so that I can do it in Photoshop. File, export, save for web. Nope, don't want to save for web. I forgot what I'm doing. File, export, export as Png, trace flower Png, and okay, and it should be ready for me to do in Photoshop. All right, so I'm going to put this out on my web for you so that if you need to follow the steps again, it will be on my blog page.
That was awesome. My goodness.